Welcome to my Sonic Adventure 3 Playstyle series, in which I go over the many members of the Sonic cast and try to design a fitting playstyle not just for their character, but also one that would fit in within the design expectations of a new adventure formula game. My goal is to show that these characters are still viable and that it is not necessary to rely on 2D sections to create a sound playstyle in 3D Sonic games. For this video, we'll be looking into how a certain echidna I know could be brought back to relevancy for his next outing. Without further ado, let us begin.
Alright!
Knuckles is an interesting character to design for. In the classic games, he was largely a variant on Sonic's playstyle rather than a separate one. He had different attributes, a unique move, and different stages from time to time. Once he took the jump into 3D, his role diverged from Sonic in a more noticeable way. He was still clearly built off of the same framework as Sonic, but now he had more unique moves and different objectives compared to simply reaching the end of a stage. Whilst there are good arguments for both his previous approaches, we'll be using the adventure version of Knuckles as inspiration, for this is supposed to be a continuation of that formula after all. It should go without saying, but all of this is intended for a game with no 2D sections within the levels. We will be using the Xbox controller as a reference for control schemes in this video. Moving the left thumbstick will cause Knuckles to move about. The further it is pushed in a direction, the faster Knuckles will run. We want him to feel responsive in the player's hands, turning to whichever direction the player holds, but having a second of animation if the angle would cause him to turn around. Think of how he moved in Sonic Adventure 2. Likewise, Knuckles will have a lower top speed than someone like Sonic, but if we look at SA2 again, in that game Knuckles was still able to move decently fast. I always saw that as a good thing, since we've seen numerous times Knuckles is more than just a brawler. His acceleration should be tuned to have a predictable climb up to his top speed. This is important to get correct, because Knuckles will be engaging in lots of platforming at calmer speeds. If he were to just shoot off, it would become tedious to control. Pressing the A button will allow Knuckles to jump, and his jump can deal damage as well as open item containers. If an item, object, or enemy is destroyed by jumping on them, Knuckles should gain a small increase in altitude, much like in past Sonic games. Pressing the A button again whilst in mid-air should cause Knuckles to use his signature glide. Whilst gliding, Knuckles will gradually decrease in height at a consistent rate. Once again, we will use Sonic Adventure 2 as an example, not Sonic 06, where he progressively lost altitude the longer he was gliding. Should Knuckles collide with a valid surface whilst gliding, he will latch onto it and be able to climb the surface. There will be some limitations, of course, such as not being able to climb on ceilings. Whilst climbing, Knuckles can either jump off or press the X button to dig. Digging will allow Knuckles to try and locate any hidden items under the surface. In some instances, digging may trigger events to occur or transport Knuckles to a new location. Likewise, if Knuckles is jumping or gliding, pressing X will activate the drill dive from SA2, a downwards attack that transitions into a dig once it hits the ground. The drill dive makes Knuckles drop at his top speed instantly, but can be cancelled into a glide if he is still in the air. A nice idea I have for this is that if the player uses the drill dive but then cancels it into a glide near the beginning, the downwards momentum is transferred into the glide instead to grant Knuckles a burst of speed. This would help increase Knuckles' traversal speed in a skilled manner that may require some practice but should be satisfying to pull off. It would also allow level design to feature some challenges that take this ability into consideration. Returning to the ground, pressing X will cause Knuckles to perform a quick punch. This can be done 3 times, performing an additional punch and then a larger boosted punch, much like what was possible in Sonic Adventure. Taking some notes from SA2 though, these attacks do not require Knuckles to be standing still, and also do not slow him down. The boost punch might even leave Knuckles with more momentum than when he started, if he was travelling at a slow speed. Whilst Knuckles is on the ground, holding the B button should allow Knuckles to rev up a spin dash. Unlike Sonic, Knuckles' spin dash charges up like the vanilla Sonic CD version. By that, I mean it has a set amount of time in which it must be held down for, and once that point is reached, Knuckles will automatically launch off. If the button is released early, Knuckles won't go anywhere. The time required would be low though, so as to not be tedious. You may be thinking that this means Knuckles' spin dash is strictly worse, but it actually has some utility. For if the B button is held whilst Knuckles is climbing a surface, Knuckles will still initiate his spin dash, facing upwards, allowing him to traverse walls with haste and hit anything that may be in the way. To no one's surprise, Knuckles is also capable of breaking numerous invulnerable objects with his attacks to find secrets. This technique could also be used near the lip of a ledge to shoot Knuckles up past it and into the air with a large amount of momentum, which could then be used to start a good glide, or to try and reach an area Knuckles usually couldn't reach. Whilst moving at a decent speed on the ground, pressing the B button will cause Knuckles to curl into a ball and roll, gaining speed from slopes and being affected by momentum. Pressing the B button whilst Knuckles is in a ball will cause him to uncurl by slamming into the ground with a punch. This cancels all of his momentum and halts him in place, but it does do damage in a shockwave around Knuckles. Think of his slam from Sonic Heroes. Lastly, for Knuckles' core moveset is a technique that we shall call the drill punch. Whilst on the ground, if the X button is held, Knuckles will start holding a punch. During this charging phase, Knuckles can only move at a snail's pace. If he jumps or is hit, the charge will end. When the X button is released, Knuckles will launch into the direction the player was facing in a straight line. This distance and speed from the attack is determined by how long the charge was held. This punch will constantly damage anything it comes into contact with whilst active, and Knuckles will not lose altitude until the move has ended. Basically, you can think of this as a hybrid between a similar skill in Sonic 06 and the Drill Wisp from Sonic Forces. This technique could be used for skillful challenges, unique traversal, and additional combat options. Continuing from the legacy of the adventure games, Knuckles' stages are largely focused around locating and finding specific items that are hidden within each stage. What these items are specifically are not too relevant for this video, but they could be Master Emerald shards, keys, chow, or anything else that a specific mission or story would require. Whilst the treasure hunting playstyle has been criticised over the years, I have elected to maintain it due to the gameplay variety it provides. Unlike a normal Sonic stage, these treasure hunting stages promote and facilitate exploration, and Knuckles' skill set excels in this setting in a way Sonic just cannot compare to. That said, I do think that there would be some merit in making at least one of Knuckles' stages simply be a traditional reach the goal mission, as Knuckles can definitely be used in such an environment as well. On average, a treasure hunting stage will likely require Knuckles to find 3 items that have multiple possible spawn locations. If the stage is reset or a life is lost, the item location should be reshuffled in order to prevent cheating. All items should spawn from the beginning unless the level itself has a unique method of obtaining them. For example, a casino level might require Knuckles to win the items through minigames. The player won't have to rely purely on eyesight though. Just like in the adventure games, Knuckles will be equipped with a radar that indicates when an item is nearby. There are disagreements amongst fans on which adventure game handled the radar better. On the one hand, some argue that SA1's more lenient radar was superior, as it helped keep the pace going and was less frustrating. Meanwhile, others would say that the SA2 radar helped make finding all the items in a short time more satisfying and skill-based. The simplest solution to this would be to offer a difficulty selection when picking Knuckles. Easy will give the player the SA1 radar that can pick up all items as long as they are in range. Then there would be the normal difficulty that makes the radar function as it did in SA2, where only one item at a time could be detected. For the real treasure hunters out there, there could also be hard mode, which not only would introduce new spawn for the items so that pros don't already know the location, but would also have no radar to assist. Stages will have hints as well, of course. Tikal flying towards emerald shards in SA1 made it a little bit too easy and defeated the point of exploration, so I think the SA2 hint system would work best here. For each item, the player can get up to 3 hints on its location. However, each time this is done, your score will receive a penalty. This way, players that don't care about having high scores can get all the assistance they need without lowering the challenge for more adept players. To get high scores, the players will want to collect all items in as short amount of time as possible with as few hints as possible. It should be impossible to get the highest rank if you play on easy difficulty, but perhaps playing on hard could give you a small bonus to your score. Stages will be populated with enemies, some of which might even hold the items Knuckles is looking for. For the most part, enemies are not intended to be a huge hindrance to gameplay, and thus will normally be defeated in one hit. That said, there will be a few foes that are tough to bring down, which help incentivize using some of Knuckles' expanded moveset. Most of Knuckles' offensive options could be considered to deal 1 damage, and most enemies will have 1 HP. His boost punch at the end of his combo should count for 2 damage. The drill punch deals 1 damage continuously for as long as the move is still active, so it theoretically could deal 3 damage to most enemies after factoring in their invulnerability frames. One technique to handle tough foes could be to balance Knuckles using the slam punch from his roll to continuously hit the enemy, which was also something possible in Sonic Heroes. A new mechanic that I think could help add some depth to Knuckles' stages is what I call the boxing glove mechanic. Basically, if Knuckles destroys certain enemies or objects with his fists, leftover material from the target sticks to his hand to form a makeshift boxing glove. This could be used in puzzles for a stage, where perhaps he must take material from one location and place it in another to activate something. Alternatively, if the B button is pressed whilst in the air, Knuckles could throw these gloves one after the other for a ranged meteor attack, much like the maneuver in Sonic Heroes. I would imagine that this feature could be taken advantage of for creative use in boss fights. As for what Knuckles' stages would be like, there should be a few different core styles that could then be built upon for variety. One is a sandbox style stage, which would be the stages we had in Sonic Adventure 2. These are areas that can be fully explored and require the player to actively search out the items. Another type of stage could be puzzle focused. The challenge of these levels is not having to search a large area, but instead to figure out how to manipulate an environment to find what you seek. What I mean by this is that a puzzle stage may have numerous switches that change the layout of some rooms, or perhaps a specific sequence of events that must be performed in the correct order for the stage to progress. The third type would be the more traditional reach the end goal stages. With stages based off these 3 principles, there should be something for all kinds of Knuckles fans to enjoy, as well as just keeping the game from getting too repetitive. Character upgrades can be very influential to the playstyle of treasure hunting levels, since this playstyle is designed to play off multiple abilities. One idea I had for an upgrade is the shovel claw item. Whilst I have proposed Knuckles can dig from the get-go for this concept, the shovel claws can be repurposed. Now I would have the shovel claws allow Knuckles to move about whilst underground after a dig, but before he must pop back up. This could be used to bypass obstacles, hit enemies from below, or maybe even access hidden areas that require this upgrade to reach. Overall, this comprises my thoughts on what would be an interesting way to take Knuckles' gameplay for a potential continuation of the adventure formula. I took inspiration from a couple of the Echidna's past appearances, as well as a few of my own ideas as well, and I think the end result is quite unique, whilst remaining faithful to the main series. What do you think? Would you like to play as this Knuckles, or do you have a better idea? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. Since this is my idea, it's great to have people who actually listen to all of it. I hope you have a great day, and see you next time.